Hey everyone, Jana here. Today, I'd like to discuss how the loot added to the pool of world drops was a complete missed opportunity and how it could have been used to bring some life into the core activities in the game in Season of the Worthy. Besides Trials, Seraph, and Season Pass loot, every other new weapon and various new armor sets were added to the game as world drops. We went from 20 to 29 weapons and from 3 armor sets per class to 12. This means world drops ballooned from 35 possible drops per class to 89. I have no issues with the addition of a lot of loot, but the way these pieces were added to the game pose a few issues. First, due to how big the number of items is in relation to the number of armor pieces, the probability of getting the exact weapon you want is really slim, and assuming these all have the same probability of dropping. Weapons are now 33% of the entire pool of world drops per character class, down from 57 last season. This also means that the probability of getting the exact piece of loot you want went from 2.86% per drop during last season to 1.12 this one, so over a 60% decrease. Second, the probability of getting the exact roll you want for a specific gun or armor piece decreased tremendously. Using the old-fashioned as an example, last season you had a 0.0018% probability of getting the exact roll you wanted, or a 0.09% probability of getting the gun but only with the traits you wanted. While this season, these two numbers decreased to 0.0006% and 0.03% respectively. Lastly, while this huge amount of loot was added to a pool that already had too many items, other areas of the game were completely neglected. Strikes, Crucible, and Gambit Classic have been living off of seasonal pinnacle weapons for well over a year, and as of lately, ritual weapons. This season, Bungie decided to abandon this model completely, leaving the core activities of the game without any new incentives to be played for the very first time since Forsaken launched. So, the core activities have no new reason to be played, while the greatest infusion of loot this season was done to a single loot source that was already too big, making it almost impossible for you to get any of the rolls you want for the guns you're going after, or the armor pieces you love the looks of. In the words of Luke Smith, we ultimately create a ton of gear that doesn't have any value beyond ticking the box on the I got it checklist. I couldn't agree more. Even though Bungie might have had a lot of great reasons to abandon ritual weapons for this season, the fact is that they completely mismanaged the new loot added to the game, since it could have been used in a more interesting way to bolster excitement for the core activities of the game, since World Drops got new additions in Season of Dawn. These new weapons could have been distributed between Strikes, Crucible, and Classic Gambit, while the armor sets could have been added to the various lost sectors in the game that don't have any specific legendary loot drops or only have guns as drops, so we could target farm the specific sets we love the looks of the most. In conjunction with the fact that we have no ritual weapons for the core activities of the game this season, and that there have been a lot of players desperately requesting for vendor refreshes for quite some time, spreading the weapons out between core activities was an easy slam dunk that could have given real incentives to play the playlists, and as a side effect, softened the blow of the ritual weapon removal. When it comes to weapons, these could have been added as exclusive end of activity rewards that you couldn't get any other way, respecting Bungie's design philosophy that when you give vendors tokens, you only get weapons themed after them. This would help bring back some level of excitement for end of activity screens. 9 new weapons were added to world drops, 5 primaries, 2 special, and 2 heavy. Based on the types of weapons in the loot pool for each of the 3 core activities, and by trying to add more options to each one and not have weapon types repeated as much as possible, I'd break them down as such. For Crucible, we'd have Dire Promise, Distant Tumulus, and Timeline's Vertex. For the Vanguard, we'd have Escape Velocity, the Giant 7 Rifle, and Honor's Edge. And for Classic Gambit, we'd have True Prophecy, Enigma's Draw, and Interference 6. By adding Dire Promise as an exclusive Crucible drop, for example, but only as a drop and something you could not get with tokens, we could start having those Ius Luna moments Luke mentioned in the latest Director's Cut. So with this simple move, Bungie could have boosted the core activities and made the new loot way more valuable and attainable, which would all work together to give players different levels of aspiration. You know, Bungie's goals for the future of the game. Given what Luke Smith mentioned in the latest director's cut, what was done here goes against pretty much everything Bungie seems to be targeting as their main focus for the future of the game. Core activities, making loot valuable, and creating aspiration. Core activities were left to dry pretty hard. This collection of new loot is less valuable than ever, and aspiration is being cut from the game because of how the loot was added. With such a big pool of world drops, and as players don't get the pieces of gear they want and the roles they are looking for, players will end up feeling way less interested in getting them as time goes by. With so much going against the player here, as I demonstrated in terms of probabilities, I believe it's hard to keep the perceived time investment for these world drops high for a mid to long period of time, which will not help in keeping players engaged with the game past the novelty phase of the DLC. And let's not forget that because of the future retirement of loot, the more time it goes by without a player getting the piece of gear they want or a specific perk combination, the less valuable it will be for them to keep playing in the hopes of getting them, completely killing off aspiration. Listen, it's great to see this loot back in the game, but given how it was handled and how its potential was squandered, it feels rather pointless. You know, I understand that it must be really hard to direct a game of this size and a team of such talent. The problem here isn't lack of talent. The problem here is lack of vision. The same amount of work done to add the guns to the world drops could have been used to add them to the core activities of the game. This is something they already do with the guns you unlock within the Season Pass, where they're added to Crucible, Vanguard, and Gambit as end-of-activity rewards. So the same thought process applies here when it comes to these world drops and how they could have been used to bolster the core activities in the game. And then there's ritual weapons. They must have known that removing ritual weapons wouldn't sit well with the community, so why not soften the blow? Alright guys, that's all I have for you. Thanks a bunch for watching and for listening. Hope you're doing well, hope you're having fun. Of course, take care, have a great day, and I'll see you around. Bye bye.